before there were gods, before there were giants, before even the idea of a world had taken shape. There was only emptiness, not darkness in the way we understand it, not silence that follows sound, but a deeper kind of nothing. The Norse called this endless void Ginnungagap, a yawning gap without direction, without edge, without purpose. It stretched endlessly, neither warm nor cold, neither alive nor dead. There was no up, no down, no past, and no future. Time itself had not yet begun to move. Within this emptiness, two realms slowly came into being. Far to the north lay Niflheim, a place of eternal cold. It was a realm of mist and shadow, where frozen rivers flowed endlessly, grinding against one another in slow, patient silence. Ice piled upon ice, forming vast glaciers that never melted. The air was heavy and still, thick with fog that concealed everything within it. Far to the south burned Muspelheim, a land of fire and light. Flames leapt endlessly across its surface, uncontained and untamed. Sparks drifted like glowing embers through a blazing sky. No life could exist there, only heat, movement, and destruction. For a time beyond counting, these two realms remained separate, but the void between them was not fixed. Slowly, imperceptibly, the cold of Niflheim crept outward, while the heat of Muspelheim reached forward. Frost spread, fire flickered, and in the very center of Ginnungagap, the impossible happened. Fire met ice. The frozen rivers began to melt. From the dripping frost, life emerged, not by design, but by accident. From those melting drops came Ymir, the first living being. He was enormous, ancient, and uncontrolled. He was neither god nor mortal, but something older and more dangerous, a giant born from chaos itself. Ymir did not think. He did not plan. He simply existed. As he slept, new giants formed from his body, born from sweat and shadow. They multiplied without intention, filling the emptiness with wild, shapeless life. There was no order among them, no law, only survival. Soon after Ymir's birth, another being emerged from the ice. Her name was Audhumla, the cosmic cow. She was gentle where Ymir was violent, steady where he was chaotic. From her flowed 4 rivers of milk, nourishing Ymir and keeping him alive. In return, Audhumla fed herself by licking the frozen salt blocks that filled the void. As she licked the ice, slowly, patiently, something remarkable began to appear. On the first day, strands of hair emerged. On the second day, the shape of a head took form. On the third day, a full figure stood free from the ice. His name was Buri. Buri was the first of the gods. He was not born from chaos, but revealed through persistence. Unlike the giants, he possessed form, intention, and clarity. He stood upright, whole and complete, already carrying the quiet authority of divinity. From Buri came a son named Bor, and from Bor came 3 sons. Odin, Vili, Ve. They were born into a world already filled with giants, creatures vast in number and strength, yet lacking restraint. The giants ruled the emptiness not through wisdom, but through sheer presence. Odin, even then, was different. He watched. While his brothers acted, Odin observed. While others fought, Odin thought. He listened to the silence between sounds. He noticed patterns where others saw randomness. He sensed that the world, as it was, could not remain unchanged. Chaos was not sustainable. Something had to give. But at this moment, before battles, before sacrifices, before wisdom was paid for with pain, Odin was simply a god born into an unfinished universe, a universe waiting to be shaped. And as the void slowly filled with ice, fire, giants, and gods, destiny began to stir. Not loudly, not urgently, but inevitably. The universe did not change all at once. It shifted slowly, almost reluctantly, as if even creation itself needed time to wake from its long sleep. Ymir still lived at the center of existence, vast and ancient, his presence filling Ginnungagap like a storm that never ended. Around him, the giants multiplied endlessly. They spread through the void, heavy-footed and careless, their movements shaking the frozen rivers and cracking the ice beneath them. There was no sky above them, no ground beneath them, only endless space crowded with life that had no direction. Odin watched. He watched the giants clash and collide, driven by instinct rather than thought. He watched chaos repeat itself again and again, without learning, without memory. And in that endless repetition, Odin understood something fundamental. This was not a world. This was only existence. Together with his brothers, Vili and Vi, Odin stood apart from the giants. Where the giants were loud and restless, the gods were quiet. Where the giants consumed everything around them, the gods considered what might come next. They spoke little. Words were not yet necessary. The decision, when it came, felt less like choice and more like inevitability. Ymir had to fall. The struggle was immense, though few would later speak of it. There were no witnesses beyond the void itself. No songs were sung. No names were shouted. Only movement, only force. When Ymir was struck down, the sound echoed through Ginnungagap like the first thunder. His blood poured outward in great, unstoppable floods. Rivers formed instantly, sweeping away nearly all the giants, carrying them into silence, into distance, into forgetting. The void was no longer empty. It was full, and then the shaping began. The brothers did not rush. They worked slowly, deliberately, as if afraid to break what they were creating. From Ymir's vast flesh, they formed the earth, solid and still, capable of holding weight and memory. They smoothed it, pressed it into shape, giving it valleys and plains. From his flowing blood, they shaped the seas, lakes, and rivers. The waters moved gently now, no longer violent, no longer endless. They learned boundaries. From his bones, the brothers raised mountains, tall and silent, unmoving against time itself. From his teeth and shattered fragments, they scattered stones and rocks, small reminders of what once had been. Then they lifted Ymir's great skull and placed it high above the forming world. It became the sky. At its edges, the gods set 4 guardians, one at each corner, to hold it in place so it would never fall. The world finally had above and below. From the sparks drifting out of Muspelheim, Odin gathered light. Carefully, patiently, he placed each spark into the sky, fixing them in patterns. These became the stars, the first points of guidance in an otherwise dark expanse. Time began to move. Days were not yet measured, but rhythm had begun. At the center of the world, the gods shaped a realm meant to be different. They called it Midgard. It was neither wild like the giants' lands, nor distant like the realms of gods. It was balanced, fragile, but protected. Around Midgard, Odin built a great boundary from Ymir's eyebrows, forming a wall that separated the human world from the chaos beyond. Creation slowed. Silence returned. For the first time since Ginnungagap first stirred, there was space between events. A place where life could grow, without being crushed by what came before it. Odin stood back and observed what they had made. The world was imperfect, but it was possible. And possibility, Odin knew, was the most powerful thing of all. The giant was gone, but his body had become everything. And in that transformation, from destruction to order, the foundation of all future stories was laid. The world rested. After the violence of creation, after the shaping of earth and sky, there came a time of stillness. The mountains stood without names. The seas moved without purpose. Wind passed over empty land, carrying no voices, leaving no footprints behind. Odin walked through the silence, not as a king, not as a conqueror, but as a watcher. His footsteps left faint impressions in the soft ground, soon erased by drifting sand and wind. Above him, the sky stretched wide and pale, the stars fixed quietly in place, observing without judgment. The world was complete, and yet it felt unfinished. Along the edge of the sea, where water met land in gentle rhythm, Odin and his brothers, Vili and Vi, wandered slowly. The tide whispered against the shore, pulling back and returning again and again, as if practicing the idea of time. It was there they saw them, 2 shapes, resting among driftwood and fallen branches. They were simple things, rough and unmoving. One was formed from the strong, pale wood of an ash tree, the other from the softer grain of an elm. They lay side by side, shaped by chance and tide, resembling something almost alive, but not quite. They had no breath, No thought, no awareness. Odin knelt beside them. He studied their stillness. He traced the lines of the wood, the knots and curves shaped by water and wind. In them, he saw possibility. Not strength, not power, but fragility. And fragility, Odin knew, was rare. He leaned close and breathed into them. Not air alone, but life. The breath moved through the wood, warming it, softening it. What had been rigid became flexible. What had been empty became full. Vili followed. He placed his hands upon them and gave them mind, the ability to think, to wonder, to choose. Movement followed thought, and slowly, uncertainly, the shapes began to shift. Then V stepped forward. He gave them form and senses. Eyes that could see light and shadow. Ears that could hear wind and water. Voices that could shape sound into meaning. Faces capable of expression. The wood faded. Skin took its place. The first humans opened their eyes. They named them Ask and Embla. Ask looked at the sky and did not understand it, but felt drawn to it. Embla listened to the sea and felt comfort without knowing why. Their hearts beat unevenly at first, learning rhythm as the waves had learned it before them. Odin watched silently. He did not give them knowledge of gods. He did not burden them with destiny. Instead, he gave them uncertainty. They would learn slowly. They would forget often. They would fear endings and dream of beginnings. Odin knew they would suffer. Time would bend their bodies. Loss would follow them closely. Death would come always sooner than they expected. And yet, they would imagine. They would tell stories. They would look into darkness and create light. They would ask questions even the gods fear to ask. The brothers stepped back. The humans stood alone. The world, once silent, now breathed with something new. Not thunder, not fire, but quiet awareness. Footsteps would soon mark the ground. Voices would soon carry across valleys. Odin turned away, already feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon him. Creation was complete, but understanding had only just begun. There are places in the universe where sound fades, where even the gods lower their voices. One such place lay beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, the great world tree whose branches held the realms and whose roots drank deeply from the unknown. Odin came to this place alone. The air was cool and unmoving. Light filtered down through twisting roots, dim and green, as though the world itself were holding its breath. Water echoed somewhere in the darkness, slow drops falling into deeper stillness. At the heart of this hidden space lay Mimir's well. Its surface was perfectly still. No ripple disturbed it. No reflection lingered long enough to be trusted. Those who gazed into it did not see themselves as they were, but as they would become. Odin approached without hesitation. He had walked the 9 realms. He had shaped the world. He had given life to humanity. And yet, he knew how little he truly understood. Wisdom did not come from rule. It came from cost. Mimir stood beside the well. Ancient and silent, his presence woven into the place itself. His eyes held centuries. His voice, when it came, was low and distant, like memory speaking to itself. "You may drink," Mimir said, "but not without payment." Odin nodded. He did not ask what the price would be. He already knew. Without ceremony, without pause, Odin reached up and removed one of his eyes. There was no cry, no struggle, only resolve. He held the eye for a moment, feeling the last traces of ordinary sight, and then let it fall. The eye sank slowly into the dark water, disappearing beneath the surface, becoming part of the well forever. Only then did Odin kneel and drink. The water was cold and endless. It filled him with knowledge that had no shape, truths that could not be spoken, futures that could not be changed. He saw time folding into itself. He saw beginnings growing from endings. He saw the slow, inevitable march toward Ragnarok. When he rose, the world had changed. Or perhaps only Odin had. From that moment on, he saw with one eye the world as it appeared, and with the other, the world as it truly was. He saw betrayal before it bloomed. He saw love turning toward loss. He saw gods walking toward their own deaths, unaware. The weight of this vision bent his posture. It aged him. The wanderer was no longer merely curious. He was burdened. But even now, Even with this knowledge burning behind his remaining eye, Odin felt something missing. Wisdom, he realized, was not a destination. It was a path without end. And so he turned away from the well, carrying its silence within him, knowing that the greatest sacrifice was not the eye he had lost, but the truths he could never unsee. Even wisdom has its limits. Odin knew this. Though he had sacrificed an eye and drunk from Mimir's well, there remained forces older than memory, patterns woven into the fabric of existence itself. These were not ideas that could be observed, only endured. They were called the runes. Symbols not merely written, but lived. To reach them, Odin chose a path no god had walked before. He went to Yggdrasil, the world tree, its branches stretching into the heavens, its roots sinking into realms unseen. The tree did not speak. It did not welcome him. It simply stood, ancient and indifferent. Odin prepared no altar. He spoke no prayer. He understood that this sacrifice would not be given to another. It would be given to himself. With his own spear, Gungnir, Odin pierced his side. The wound was precise, deliberate. Blood fell in slow drops, dark against the bark of the tree. Then he hung himself from Yggdrasil, suspended between sky and earth, between breath and silence, between life and something beyond it. For 9 nights and 9 days, Odin remained there. No food passed his lips. No water cooled his throat. The winds moved around him, whispering in languages without sound. Time lost its meaning. Pain became distant, then constant, then something else entirely. The world blurred. Visions came and went like shadows on water. He saw the rise of cities. He saw their collapse. He saw children yet unborn speaking words that would shape kingdoms. But still, the runes did not appear. On the 7th night, his strength faded. On the 8th, his thoughts began to unravel. By the 9th, Odin was no longer certain whether he was alive or already gone. And in that emptiness, when the self had been stripped away, the runes revealed themselves. They did not descend from the sky. They rose from within him. Symbols of power, fate, and transformation burned into his awareness. Each rune carried a story. Each demanded understanding. Each required responsibility. Odin reached for them and fell. He struck the ground below, alive but changed. The god who rose was not the god who had climbed the tree. He had crossed the threshold. From that day forward, Odin held mastery over magic, poetry, prophecy, and death. He could speak words that healed or destroyed. He could see paths hidden from all others. But the cost lingered. His body bore the memory of the tree. His spirit carried the weight of what he had learned. Knowledge, once gained, could not be released. Odin did not celebrate. He did not rest. He simply walked on, wiser, quieter, and forever altered. For the runes had taught him the final truth, that wisdom is not found in power, but in the willingness to suffer for meaning. Asgard stood above the world like a held breath. Its halls were vast but never loud. Stone and gold caught soft light from the sky that never fully darkened. Time moved differently there, slower, heavier, as though each moment wished to be remembered. At the center of Asgard rose Valsjaf, Odin's hall. From its high seat, Litsjaf, Odin could look across all realms. He could see Midgard's small fires glowing in the night. He could see the giants moving in distant lands. He could even glimpse shadows gathering where no light remained long. But knowledge did not bring comfort. It brought distance. Odin ruled as All-Father, yet he was never close in the way mortals understood closeness. He listened more than he spoke. When he spoke, his words were measured, chosen carefully, as though each one carried weight beyond sound. Beside him sat Frigg. She was quiet, composed, her presence steady as still water. Frigg knew many things, perhaps as many as Odin, but where he searched relentlessly for truth, she accepted what could not be changed. She saw futures unfold in silence and carried them without sharing their burden. Between them, there was love and restraint. They had learned that some knowledge, when spoken, could hasten its own arrival. Odin's children filled the halls of Asgard, each carrying a fragment of his fate. Thor, strongest among them, moved like thunder given form. His laughter echoed where Odin's did not. He trusted easily. He fought openly. Where Odin thought, Thor acted, and Odin loved him for that simplicity, knowing it would one day place Thor in danger. Baldr was different. Light seemed to follow him. His presence softened even the hardest gods. When Baldr spoke, others listened, not because they feared him, but because they wished to agree. Odin watched his son with a quiet sadness, already aware of how brief such purity could be. Hr, Baldr's brother, stood often at the edges of gatherings. Blind, yet not unaware, he listened carefully, sensing what others overlooked. Odin felt a sharp, unspoken ache for him, an understanding that HR's path would be shaped by hands not his own. There were others, Vidar, silent and observant, whose patience rivaled stone. Hermr, swift and loyal, forever ready to ride between realms. Each child was a thread in a tapestry Odin could see but not alter. And then there was Loki, bound to Odin by oath, not blood, clever, shifting, impossible to hold still. Loki's words danced, his loyalty bent. Odin recognized in him both brilliance and ruin. Odin knew what Loki would bring: chaos, loss, change. But Odin also knew this truth above all others. Fate does not unravel when avoided. It tightens. So Odin allowed Loki to remain. He watched him closely. He said little. He waited. From Hlidskjalf, Odin observed his family moving through their days, laughing, arguing, growing, unaware how near their ending stood. The All-Father felt the weight of every future pressing gently against his thoughts. He had given them life. He had given them power. But he could not give them escape. And so Odin ruled not as a tyrant, not as a hero, but as a guardian of time, watching his children walk toward destinies he had already seen and could never prevent. The dreams began without warning. Baldr, beloved by gods and mortals alike, started waking in the still hours of Asgard with a heaviness in his chest. In his sleep, he saw darkness moving closer, slow and patient. He felt the silence of things ending. He spoke of these dreams quietly at first, but dreams, when shared, have a way of spreading. Soon, all of Asgard knew. Fear touched even the gods, not the sharp fear of battle, but the softer, deeper fear of loss. Baldr was light itself to them. His presence eased old wounds. His laughter softened harsh words. The thought of a world without him felt wrong, as though a star might simply vanish from the sky. Frigg listened, and she acted. She traveled across the 9 realms, moving carefully, asking everything that existed for a promise. Fire swore it would not burn Baldr. Water swore it would not drown him. Stone swore it would not strike him. Metal swore it would not cut him. Illness, beasts, weapons, and poisons all gave their word. Nothing would harm her son. Nothing, she believed. When Frigg returned, the gods tested the promises, not out of cruelty, but out of relief. They threw stones at Baldr. They struck him with blades. They sent arrows flying toward his chest. Each time, the weapons fell harmlessly away. Laughter returned to Asgard. Only one god did not laugh. Odin watched in silence. He had already seen this moment, flickering at the edge of Mimir's well, whispering through the runes. Knowledge did not grant him the power to intervene. It only made him aware of how narrow the path truly was. And in the shadows, Loki watched as well. He listened to the laughter. He studied the joy. And he felt the quiet pull of disruption, the need to prove that no promise was complete. Disguised as an old woman, Loki approached Frigg. He asked gentle questions. And Frigg, weary and unguarded, spoke of mistletoe, small, harmless, overlooked. She had not asked it to swear an oath. It seemed too young, too fragile. Loki smiled. From mistletoe, he fashioned a dart, light and thin, almost weightless. Then he found Hr, Baldr's blind brother, standing apart from the others. Hr could not see the game. He could only hear it. Loki guided his hand. He aimed the dart, and the world held its breath. The mistletoe flew. Baldr fell. There was no cry, no struggle, only the sound of a body touching the ground. Silence spread through Asgard like frost. Frigg's grief broke the stillness, sharp and human. The gods gathered around Baldr, touching him as though warmth might return if they wished hard enough. But Odin did not move. He had seen this death before it arrived, and knowing it did not make it lighter. Baldr was placed upon his funeral pyre. His ship was set adrift. Flames rose slowly, carrying light into darkness. As the fire faded, something else took its place, a certainty. Ragnarok was no longer distant. It was approaching, and Odin, the All-Father, felt the weight of every sacrifice he had made settle into a single truth. Wisdom could show the future, but it could not change it. The end of the world did not arrive suddenly. It came the way winter comes, slowly, without asking permission. The signs had appeared long before anyone dared to speak them aloud. Seasons lost their rhythm. Storms lingered longer than they should. The sun rose pale and weak, as if tired of its own light. This was Fimbul winter. 3 long winters followed one another without summer in between. Snow covered Midgard. Hunger spread quietly. Brothers turned against brothers. Old bonds thinned and broke. Odin watched from Asgard. He did not rage. He did not plead. He had known this time would come. The wolf skull and Hattie finally caught the sun and moon. Darkness settled across the realms. Stars vanished one by one, as though extinguished by unseen hands. The world tree Yggdrasil shuddered, its leaves trembling, its roots groaning beneath the weight of what was approaching. The dead stirred. From hell, the ship Naglfar, made from the nails of the unburied, broke free from its moorings. Giants marched from the east. Fire surged from Muspelheim, led by the flame giant Sirk, his sword burning brighter than the sky. The gods gathered. They did not speak of victory. They spoke of duty. Odin placed his helm upon his head and took up Gungnir, his spear, the same weapon he had once used to sacrifice himself. 2 Raven, Hugin, and Munin circled above him, thought and memory, returning one final time. Odin mounted his 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, and rode toward the battlefield. There was no hesitation in his movement, only resolve. At Vigrid, the final field, gods and monsters met beneath a broken sky. Thunder roared as Thor faced the world serpent Jormungandr. Flames clashed with steel. The sound of battle rolled across the realms like distant waves. And Odin faced Fenrir. The wolf was vast beyond measure, his jaws stretching wide enough to swallow the horizon. Odin had known this moment since the day he drank from Mimir's well. He did not turn away. He did not cry out. Fenrir lunged, and Odin was devoured. There was no spectacle, no last words, only the quiet completion of fate. But Odin's death was not an ending. It was a passage. His son Vidar stepped forward, silent and resolute. With strength born of patience, he avenged his father, tearing Fenrir apart. The battle burned itself out. Fire consumed the world. The seas rose and swallowed the land. Then, at last, silence. And from that silence, something new emerged. The earth rose again green, cleansed and calm. The sun returned, brighter than before. A few gods remained. 2 humans, Lif and Fraser, stepped into the light, carrying the memory of all that had been lost. Odin did not return, but his sacrifices remained woven into the world itself. He had given his eye for wisdom. He had given his body for the runes. He had given his life for the balance of time. He was never the god of comfort. He was a god who endured. And in the quiet world that followed the end, Odin's legacy lived on, not in power, but in understanding. The world breathed again, and somewhere beyond time, the All-Father rested at last. The story has ended. The fire has faded. The night is calm once more. And now, you may rest.